Section 1. The Myth versus the Man, deconstructing the Napoleonic legend. Myth often clouds the truth. Napoleon Bonaparte is a prime example. A common myth claimed he was exceptionally short. That image came from British wartime propaganda. Cartoons depicted Little Boney, a tiny figure with a massive ego. The reality is different. He stood about 5 feet 6 inches, average for Frenchmen then. Confusion between French and British units fed the myth, and enemies amplified it. One myth shows how a complex man becomes a caricature. The real Napoleon was far more intricate: intellect, drive, strategic brilliance. Enemies painted him a monster, yet his soldiers often showed unwavering loyalty. He was a great military general, and more. He was a legislator and a reformer, patron of arts and sciences, not merely conquest. He rose from obscurity to command an empire and reshape Europe's landscape. To understand him, we must examine his actions, victories, and the mistakes that led to his downfall. To assess greatness, weigh achievements against the destruction his wars caused. By separating man from myth, we begin to grasp his true complexity. Section 2. From Corsican roots to French ambition. His journey began far from Europe's centers of power. Born on Corsica in 1769, a year after the island passed from Genoa to France, the Bonaparte, minor Italian nobility, had status more than wealth. He spoke Corsican, distrusted the French as occupiers, and felt like an outsider. At 9, he entered Brienne Military School. Mainland France was a harsh transition. Mocked for accent, name, and humble origins, he turned inward to books. He devoured history, geography, mathematics, disciplines that later shaped his warfare. He studied leaders, Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar. His training continued at the École Militaire, specializing in artillery. A deep grasp of artillery became a cornerstone of his tactics. He graduated in 1785 at 16, commissioned a second lieutenant. The revolution erupted. Aristocratic officers fled or were executed. Vacancies opened. After clashing with Pasquale Paoli, he fled Corsica in 1793 and embraced the Republic. At Toulon, he seized a key fort, forcing the British and Royalists to withdraw. Victory made him brigadier general at 24, noticed in Paris. Given the army of Italy, ragged, underfed, demoralized, he saw opportunity. He promised honor, glory, and riches in the fertile plains. He reorganized, improved supply, and instilled discipline, transforming the army. He avoided slow wars of attrition, moved fast, struck decisively, and divided enemies. Keeping forces concentrated, he smashed isolated columns in sequence. Lodi forged his bond with troops. Mantua drew in Austrian armies he defeated in turn. Castiglione, Arcole, Rivoli, victories that broke Austrian power in Italy. Acting independently, he negotiated peace, redrew territories, and shipped tribute and art. Sent to Egypt in 1798 to hurt Britain and emulate Alexander, he struck quickly. He brought scientists, scholars, and artists to study history, geography, and culture. At the pyramids, he formed vast infantry squares to repel Mamluk cavalry and took Cairo. Days later, Nelson annihilated the French fleet, trapping the army in Egypt. He governed, reformed, and his commission found the Rosetta Stone, key to hieroglyphs. The Syrian campaign failed. With France in turmoil, he chose to return. He slipped past British patrols, returned to acclaim, and sensed his moment. In November 1799, he overthrew the Directory and became first consul. In 1804, he crowned himself emperor, aiming to stand equal with monarchs. Britain, Austria, and Russia formed the Third Coalition. He enveloped an Austrian army at Ulm and entered Vienna without a fight. On December 2, 1805, he feigned weakness, split the Allied center, and won Austerlitz, his masterpiece. By Tilsit, he stood at his zenith, master of Europe, map redrawn with family and marshals on thrones. At the height of his power, he made critical errors. In Spain, he imposed his brother Joseph, provoking a brutal guerrilla war, the Spanish Ulcer. It consumed men and resources without decisive battles. In 1812, he invaded Russia with over 600,000 men. Russians refused battle, burned supplies, and lured him deep into the interior. His army withered long before winter arrived. He won at Borodino, occupied a deserted Moscow, and watched it burn. The retreat destroyed the Grande Armée. Winter, hunger, and relentless harassment. Fewer than 100,000 returned. Leipzig in 1813 ended the myth of invincibility. Paris fell. He abdicated and was exiled to Elba. He escaped, rallied France, and finally lost at Waterloo to British and Prussian forces. Exiled to remote St. Helena, he spent 6 years dictating his story. As a commander, his strategy, tactics, logistics, speed, and maneuver reshaped warfare. He inspired loyalty and advanced merit over birth. Beyond battle, he imposed order, centralized the state, and issued the Napoleonic Code. Its influence spread across Europe, Latin America, and beyond. Yet his ambition brought staggering human cost. He remains a complex, contradictory figure, neither villain of cartoons nor infallible hero.